Today we're going to work more with the actual textures of our texture project. So last time you were here, we made a line design on some tag board and we put glue on top of our lines. Today it's fun because you can feel that the dry glue has an actual texture. Now we need to cover this tag board with some shiny aluminum foil. So everyone's going to get a piece of foil like this. You have to be gentle because foil tears very easily. It also crinkles very easily, and you're only going to get one piece, so treat it gently. I'm going to look at my foil. One side is kind of shiny, and one side is really shiny. I want the really shiny side to be the part that shows on my artwork, so that means that I'm going to put the glue on just the kind of shiny side. If you want your project to be really shiny, then you're going to have to pay attention to that step too. So I'm opening up my glue stick and I'm twisting it just a little bit up, and I'm going to put glue all over the center of my foil. I'm trying to cover an area that's about as big as my tag board. So I'm just kind of rubbing that glue. I'm being really careful not to tear the foil. Make sure that the plastic part of your glue stick doesn't scrape, because if the plastic part touches it, it could probably tear this foil. Okay, so I'm just making a nice big rectangle all filled with glue. Really nice and sticky. Okay, now the next step is I need to put my tag board down so that the texture touches the foil. If you put it down this way, the textures aren't going to show through. It's just going to be a smooth side. So I'm putting my texture face down. I'm just going to press it kind of gently. Now before I flip it, I need to wrap up my tag board kind of like a present. So this is how I like to do it so that it looks nice and neat. I start by folding in one side. I try to make the fold right at the edge of the tag board. That way it has this nice straight edge. Then I do the same thing on the opposite side. Trying to make my folds nice and flat. Don't want it all crumpled up in a big wadded up piece of foil. Okay, so I'm pressing it flat. And then the last two edges, I'm just going to fold up the same way. Now the last two, sometimes I like to put just a little bit of glue down to kind of hold the foil in place. Creasing it nicely is important so that when you flip it over, it looks like a nice, perfect rectangle. It doesn't have any weird edges that aren't straight. Now for the fun part. We're going to use the very soft part of our finger to rub the top of the foil and make our actual texture show up. Do not use your fingernail. Don't use fingers that have rings or watches or anything that has a sharp edge, because sharp edges could tear the foil. I'm only using the soft part. And very gently, I'm going to start rubbing. And sure enough, my textures of the glue lines are going to start to show through. take a minute to get them to all show up. Just keep rubbing until all of your lines are visible. Now the next step is we're going to draw some actual textures onto our foil. I like to practice my textures before I actually put them on the foil because there's no way to erase once you draw on this. So some of my favorite actual or implied textures to draw could be a texture that looks like hair or grass. It's like kind of a prickly texture. Sometimes I like to draw textures that look like bumps. Sometimes you can even stack your bumps on top of each other and it looks like scales. That's one of my favorite ones to draw. And there's other ways you could draw bumps. You could draw circular shapes. You might draw textures that look jaggedy or pointy. There's a lot of different designs and patterns that you can create with these different texture ideas. So I really like to practice so that I can figure out which ones are my favorite. Now after you've practiced, we're going to take a dull pencil. You do not want one that is too sharp because the sharp one could very easily tear your foil. So we're going to zoom into this top corner and I'm going to choose one texture design to do in this section. Every different section created by my lines is going to have a different texture. So I'm going to start with this one and very carefully and gently I'm going to use my pencil to press the actual texture onto the foil. And I'm being really careful to do a good job because like I said, there's no way to erase. Once the textures are pressed onto the foil, they are there forever. It's really cool because it has kind of a shiny look to the texture. And if you're gentle, you can feel it as well because it's actual texture. Be really gentle when you're right next to the glue line because that's a spot where your pencil could poke through easily and make a hole. So whenever I'm right here, I push down really gentle. Over here you can push a little harder. But you don't have to push too hard. The foil really lets the texture show up very easily. Now as you can see, this takes a pretty long time, so don't worry about getting all of your textures done today. Take your time because you will be able to work on your textures during your next art class as well.